Well, there's a couple people who wrestled for NXT UK that
Mm,
at least came into my world and my son's world as we were watching wrestling at the time a lot, and they both a few of them made quite an impact, and I have trouble separating these two from each other. Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne,
right.
those two to
Fantastic.
me
Yeah.
just fantastic, and they're similar in some ways, but they're very different. When did you first come to see Tyler Bate or Pete Dunne?
So I'd heard about them, and then I went over to England in 2016 for an extended summer break, and I went to shows every day. Um, and again, that's when I found out that this, whatever this thing was, this Brit
There,
wrestling
there weren't
wasn't.
shows every day.
There weren't shows every day unless you were at All Star Promotions, right? There was, I was, so I met them then and I watched them. And one of my things was watching people, how they connect with the crowd in reality and knowing who can connect and who can't. And that really led me to making a lot of notes about who and just writing them down because I'd done this in Japan as well. I'd done this in many places. And I'd been to Brazil and I'd been to because it was always just in case, right? What that's we've mentioned this before, but how did I pull out off the cruiserweight classic? Because I kept an eye on everything. I did my homework, and so did everybody in talent development. We did a homework. Well, when it comes to wrestling, that was my thing. So I made sure I knew pretty much everything that was going on and tried to go to as many places as I could. Not only just watch, because watching tapes is one thing, seeing people up in live and how people react to them and the little things that they do, and that, me knowing how to connect with an audience or not to connect or whatever I've learned over the years. So I went over there and um, then realized, yeah, this is all sounds great, but there's not really that much going on. You've got to scrape, Pete Dunne was the exception of not Pete and Tyler and Trent and all those guys. They were working for Progress and they were working for ICW, but they were also working every little other show that they could possibly get on
Right.
by
And
every promoter
selling merch.
and selling merch and selling lots of merch and doing really well. So it was it, it was just a process of finding out who I could call and who would be smart enough to not and actually that's not the right word at all. Who would be understandable or understanding of the trying to get a bigger platform and hopefully up their game a little bit. Um, and everybody had a different idea as well. There was a lot of guys around and ladies at that time that had their own ideas of what they wanted, and they didn't want to, they wanted to they had different goals. Zack Sabre Jr. being one of them. His goal was to go to New Japan, and it's worked out very well for him, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but he got to be in the Cruiserweight Classic, and he got that experience, and it was good for him. And I don't know. You'd have to ask him whether it did any helped him in any way. I don't know. I have no idea. But it's certainly something that's on. It's there to go and watch whenever you want to watch it and see what he did. Um, and so it was the people that I called. They all turned up. They all did their thing. it gave a lot of people. There was, and they were all already doing. There was people, Zach being one of them, doing things, coming over here and working a punishing schedule every other week or whatever he was doing. But then Pete and Tyler, as soon as I saw them, I was like, wow. And what I actually saw was the biggest thing with them was that they were doing something different. They were doing more of a old traditional British style, which made them stand out.
Right.
And then when I got to talking to him and got to know him, like I said, who's been trained? Who's taught you this? And they said, well, nobody. I said, what do you mean nobody? Well, we just figured that and they'll have their own stories, but we figured that we need to be different because everybody does the same stuff. We went back and watched a lot of old British wrestling and started copying that. And so it was different. And that sometimes is the key to this, is when Dean Malenko's told me that his dad had a saying, when everybody's in the air, you go on the ground. When everybody's on the ground, you go in the air.
Mm. Yeah, works that way in music too.
Right. And it's so that once I saw them, I said, oh, right. And they were stood out because they were doing different stuff. Because most people do the same stuff. We've talked about this before. This, again, I don't care if it upsets people. The modern style that has gone on, all peaked at Portland takeover in February of 2020. Everything now on is more of the same, unless you are one or two people, or unless you go back in time, or unless it's people need to put more thought into that and to understand that there's a shelf life on anything. And okay, once I've seen you do whatever amount of whatever, now what? Now what? We started. Am I right in saying we started talking about Brian Gebertz?
Mm-hmm.
He saved me. Again, another reason why I'd like him so much. There's only so much wrestling I could do on TV before it becomes, okay, what next?
Right.
And I'd lived through that in WCW. He gave me opportunities to show my other side. So it gave it a break. If you're just doing the same stuff all the time, no matter how good it is, it becomes
Same. Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you for. I know this subject was not easy for you to talk about, and I know there's not a lot.
it's far from easy.
Yeah.
There's just people that are gonna and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
First of all, just to let you know, do your worst as far as when it comes to me.
Right.
And it's too late. I've already won.
Yeah, it's over. That part's over.
I'm 39 years in.
Right.
It's too late. And you also all know, if you really take stock of yourself, that you're all full of it. Because I've lived through it all, and I've lived through far more than most people, with an open mind and not a closed in silly wrestling mind.